Welcome to Disability Matters with your host, Joyce Bender. All comments, views, and opinions expressed on the show are solely those of the host, guest, and callers. Now, the host of Disability Matters, here's Joyce Bender.
Hi, everyone. This is Joyce Bender. Welcome to Disability Matters. I hope you're all having a great day. You know, I don't think I've told you this before, but that intro jazz music that you hear was written by Gerald Homey, who works for me and plays the sax. And I've been, that's the intro to my show and has been for years, but it's when he just walked past the door. And I thought, oh, I should tell them. Gerald wrote this. And there he goes, Gerald Homey. And his father, Jim, is the very first person with a disability I ever found employment for. Very first. Before there was a Bender Consulting Services. And now here he is, the senior manager of talent and acquisition at Bender. So things happen. Things happen for a reason. It's an amazing world we live in. But I want to first start by thanking all of you fabulous listeners. There aren't any listeners as great as my listeners. You are really, you know what you are? You're dedicated. And you're curious, you want to know more and more about disability and your disability and quality of life and what you can do, to help other people. Thank you, thank you. And to all the countries around the world with listeners. You know what I'm going to do? Yes, you do. Number 2 country, right behind the United States, with the most listeners is Singapore. Once again, Singapore, you are on a major roll. I can't wait till I come there to that country because you are such faithful listeners. And you know what? You're helping. First, you're helping me impact other countries hearing what you're doing. But most importantly, you're going to be able to share with other people with disabilities in your country why they should be listening to this show. And I've been to Japan, Indonesia, South Korea, Kazakhstan, Panama, but not Singapore. So that's on my list. Singapore is on the list. That's where I went to those other countries. And I know Helena will remember that. She too, around the same time, was on the Speakers Bureau. I think she went to Israel. I'm sure she went to many places, which we'll soon find out. But I love you all in Singapore. But I also mention another country every show. So today, in the top 10 is something very personal to Helena Berger. That's why I'm going to mention it. Vietnam. Vietnam is in the top 10 with the most listeners. And you know what? I mean, thank you so much. You're going to hear from Helena. I'm going to ask her to tell all of you why I said that. But then I want you to know, here we are. We have countries with 4 listeners, like Ghana. Or we have a country with 1 listener, like American Samoa. So here's what I want to say about those listeners. You're awesome. One person can make a difference. One person. You can spread the news. Who knows? You may save a life just by telling someone they matter. They matter. And they can achieve any goal you're going to hear in a few minutes because of what president we're going to be talking about. But it does not stop you. You can achieve greatness no matter what. No matter what. Okay, here it comes. Ready? Special shout out to Yoshiko. Hey, Yoshiko, I have two of your friends here, Mary Dolan and Helena Berger, on the show today. And just yesterday, Senator Harkin was on for half an hour. And he talked about people that were so vital and important to the whole ADA movement. And yes, Yoshiko, you've heard it by now, but he mentioned Justin and Yoshiko. So we love you. I will always be talking about you and mentioning you. And oh, yes, same thing with Dr. Vincent Pineda. So, talking about you. So, thank you. Yoshiko, we all love you. And Highmark, what a great company. They have been the sponsor of the show for years, the lead sponsor. They are such a great company. So great. And so are my two guests today. I love them both. And that would be Helena Berger, who is the board chair, and Mary Dolan, who is the co-founder and executive director of the FDR Memorial Foundation. The new name, I love this name. This name is easier to remember. Less words. I love this name. And Helena, I've known Helena, oh my goodness. Let's see, maybe 1997 or something like that. I received the President's Award at the White House from President Clinton in 1999. But didn't I know you before that? I knew Andy. I knew Andy.
We got to know each other when I think when you became the board member of American Association of People with Disabilities. I think that's when we really got to know each other. But
Yeah,
so think about that. That's a really long time ago.
it's a very long time ago. And you know what? Do you know how I became I would not have been a member were it not for Andy and Parado. Because if you recall, at the very beginning, no businesses could be on that board. It was only people with disabilities and or disability rights leaders, but they didn't want company representatives. And they told that to Andy about me. And he called me and he said, this is in his very young days. You are a great American. You should be on this board. And that's how I got on the board. Thank goodness that all happened, because then I also met Helena Berger. And when I say we're friends, I mean, Helena is someone that if I had to be out of the country for an extended time period, and I desperately needed someone to come here at Bender to oversee something, in a minute, I would ask Helena. In a minute. I trust her 100%. Anything, I would feel confident I could tell Helena. And I just love you, Helena Berger, who, of course, then became the CEO of the American Association of People with Disabilities. And Helena, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Joyce. I appreciate those really, really kind words, and the love and respect is mutual.
I know it is. I know it is. Helena, before we get going, and before I'm welcoming Mary Dolan, but before we get going here, do you want to tell them why I said that about Vietnam?
Sure. So, Joyce mentioned that we both have been part of the Speakers Bureau for the U.S. State Department. I had an opportunity to go to Vietnam and represent us to talk about disability rights in the United States, to talk with disability leaders, to talk with political leaders, and to talk about the inclusion and the rights of people with disabilities and the ADA. And now I also serve as vice chair of an organization called Children of Vietnam that is providing programs and services to take children who are disadvantaged from poverty to live fulfilling lives through many different programs. If you're interested, you can go to childrenofvietnam.org, and this certainly includes children with disabilities. There's a very robust program focused on kids with disabilities. So it's, in addition to the FDR Memorial Foundation, it's another nonprofit that is near and dear to my heart and doing just phenomenal work, like I said, to have kids who come from disadvantaged backgrounds have, like I say, full and fulfilling lives.
Well, it's a wonderful program. Well, I thought of you right away when I saw Vietnam. That's why I had to, and not to forget, I had a long conversation the other day with Yoshiko, and she took me through that story of when Justin saw the children with polio in Vietnam and how they were, it was terrible, on the floor, like, I mean, just beyond squalid, terrible food plates on the ground with flies, and as you know, look what happened. Look what happened with Justin and Yoshiko. Look what they did. They saw something terrible, but they didn't just say, "Oh, isn't that terrible?" They did something. That's what made Justin the great man and Yoshiko the great woman that she is. But Helena, let's start here with you. As you now here, we've come a long way on this show that is now on YouTube. When I talk to you, I feel like I'm on CNN and I'm seeing this little panel of people here. I wanted to, if you don't mind, so many people listen to the show, but they don't all, of course, know my listener, my guest. Would you mind telling them your background, that got you into disability advocacy and what happened after that?
Sure. So I was a political science major, so I always had an interest in policy. And I was in Washington, D.C., but moved to the southern New Jersey, Philadelphia area, and I was looking for employment. And this is a long time ago, so I was actually looking in the newspaper back then when you looked in the paper for employment, the Sunday edition, right, that had all the employment ads. And I came across this ad for an advocate for an organization called Eastern Paralyzed Veterans Association. Some of your listeners may be aware of United Spinal Association. That's their current name, but their previous name was Eastern Paralyzed Veterans Association. They were a chapter of Paralyzed Veterans of America, PVA, that still exists. Long story short, I applied for the advocacy position. I got it. Full disclosure, I'm not a person with a disability. I did not have a connection to the community. So when I started this job, it was an epiphany, I guess, that I had. I wasn't, for somebody who I thought was progressive and understood civil rights and people who are being discriminated and oppressed. To be honest, I never thought about people with disabilities because it just wasn't part of my life. And this whole new world opened up to me. And that's how I started my disability rights career. Like I said, I got hired as an advocate, became their advocacy director, moved back to Washington, D.C., and ultimately started working for AAPD. And I was there for many, many years. Like you said, I left there in 2019 as the CEO. But my start as a disability rights advocate started with EPVA. And I think I sort of felt when I had that job, like I just knew this is what I was supposed to do. This is where I was supposed to be. I never looked back. I never regretted it. And until this day, it was like karma. It was meant to be.
Mm-hmm. Who hired you there, Helena?
Um, it was a gentleman by the name of John Del Calle who headed up their government affairs department. He's no longer there. He was a Vietnam veteran, wheelchair user, and that's.
And I'm sorry, I mean
Sure.
an AAPD.
Oh, I'm sorry, AAPD. Oh, I'm sorry. Duh. It was Paul Hearn. So
Is that
Paul.
right?
So some of you may be aware, not aware, but Paul was one of the co-founders of AAPD and the very first president and CEO. And I knew Paul from my days at Eastern Paralyzed Veterans Association when the ADA was passed. EPVA and the program I ran, we were doing a lot of educational events around the Americans with Disabilities Act to start educating the public, to educate businesses, to educate Title II entities. And we reached out to Paul on a couple of occasions to come and be our keynote speaker. And that's how I developed my relationship with Paul. And then when I moved to DC, and I ran into Paul at an event, and he asked me what I was doing. And at that point, I was consulting for Paralyzed Veterans of America. He said, we need to talk. And we set up a meeting and we talked. And I ended up at AAPD.
Well, he made a good decision there. Yeah, I'll tell you, everyone loves him. When John Kim talks about him, I don't care who it is, Paul Hearn. They love Paul Hearn.
Paul had a huge personality. He filled the room. I mean, he was very personable, really gregarious. I mean, obviously very smart, but he just had this bigger than life personality, and people, like I said, just gravitated towards him.
Mary. He sounds like Mary Brock. I mean, the bigger than life personality. That reminds me of Mary. Speaking of Mary, you know what I thought about? Well, you won't believe this, but it's 5 years. 5 years since Mary died, 5 years ago. Worst thing I ever went through. But her spirit lives on. We have kept her spirit going. But I thought about you when I was talking about Mary. I thought about that time I won't mention the name of this organization, but I went to a conference and they had a rock band up there. Do you know what I'm talking about? They had a rock band playing, but everyone in the audience was just very
I definitely
except Mary.
Oh,
And Mary was up trying around doing all this, and then she sort of got the frown upon, except Helena, who was laughing the whole time. Yes, I thought about that, Helena.
Yeah.
Well, that is a great story, how you got hired. And that means, Helena, I never realized this. Were you there when the ADA was signed? Were you there when that
At
happened?
APD?
Yeah.
No. So APD started 5 years after on the 5th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Same age as this company.
Exactly, same age as Bender Consulting. So that was 95. I started at APD in September of 97.
How about you were at Paralyzed Veterans?
So when I was at EPVA, that would have been, yes, the ADA would have been signed because like I was saying, one of the things we did at EPVA was just a lot of education around the ADA. So yeah, I was working at EPVA when ADA was signed and became law. Yep.
I love it every time Senator Harkin tells the story. I can listen to him and Tony and Steny and all of them talk over and over again about it. But yeah, that was something I was not at, but just feel like I live it through other people. Like our other great guest, who I've also known for quite a while, Mary Dolan, who is the co-founder and executive director at the FDR Memorial Foundation. So she's like the queen pin. She's the person running the show. She's the person that you all should send money to. So you need to go to, what is the website?
FDRmemorial.org. And in the top right-hand corner, you can't miss it. There's a donate button. And we are very happy to receive any donations, large or small. You can make them monthly. We have one gentleman out in California who sends us about $35 each month, has been doing it for every month for a few years, because he knows that the FDR Memorial needs to always be there, and he wants to keep honoring that space, but also the legacies of Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt. So I hope more people feel impassioned to do so.
Well, you may be celebrating, this is Disability Pride Month, which is why I had Steny and Congressman Hoyer and former Congressman Tony Coelho on the first of the month. That's who I had on. And now here I am, having you on, and the whole month is all disability rights leaders, all people making a difference, all people that I feel it's important to celebrate as we are going through ADA month. And so if you're listening, FDR Memorial, so important. Here's a president with a disability. I don't know why people don't use this example all the time, that, look what he accomplished, look what he did, but we've got to keep that monument. And the foundation is how you do it. So if you have a disability and you're celebrating Disability Pride Month, before you turn off the TV, the computer, or however you're seeing this, you can make a donation. It's not the amount, it's the making the donation.
And if
So-
I could just,
That's
I'm sorry.
correct.
So yeah, if I could just add, small donations add up. People sometimes forget that, every $5, if there were 100 people giving $5, it's $500. So people don't realize these, small contributions really can add up and make a difference.
And if I could add in there as well, that thanks to the Gordon and Laura Gund Foundation, every dollar is matched up until $750,000. So we have a long ways to go too. So I'm saying every dollar is going to be matched by that wonderful foundation. And I will just make a quick plug for Gordon and Laura Gund. Laura is no longer with us, but the Gunds are major donors to the FDR wheelchair statue, along with Judy and Peter Kovler. But Gordon Gund as well, who happens to be a gentleman who is blind, who made a major gift, and with his monies, and of course that of the Kovlers and many others, that wheelchair statue would not be there today.
No kidding. Well, how do you pronounce his last name again?
Gund, Gund, Gun as in Nelly,
Okay.
D as in dog. Yes.
Mr. Gund, thank you. Because around the world, you should be recognized as a champion for helping this group. Now, we're small. That's why every dollar is important. And I'm very honored to be on the advisory board of the FDR Memorial Foundation. But Mary, how about if you tell everyone about your background?
Thank you. And Joyce, we're thrilled that you are one of our advisory board members. And so, yes, the foundation is, we are small but mighty.
Yep.
There is one full-time person, that's myself. And then we hire other folks to do, it's a gig economy, but folks who do, some jobs here and there for us. So what I'm trying to say is this is a low overhead kind of organization. And the far majority of the donations go fully into program. So you're not funding a big office space or other things like that. So I think the question was about how I got into this line of work. And so I'll go a little bit into the history. Got out of graduate school and I had studied human rights, and I wanted to work in something that made a difference. And I happened upon an interview, I was accepted to have a conversation with a man named Alan Reich. And Alan was the president and founder of the National Organization on Disability. I was actually using a headhunter, and they just said, go just talk to this man. He's an interesting fellow. And we went to lunch at the, no, actually, that I didn't go to lunch first with him, but I went into his office. I mispronounced his name. I said Reich. I was reminded it wasn't Reich, it's Reich. And I had one of the most delightful interviews that anybody could ever have. We talked about art and literature and politics and vacations. I mean, everything but the job. And at that time, he said that he was looking for somebody to really be his typist, to be a secretary for him, which with all due respect, that's a wonderful thing to do. I just wasn't looking for that at that time. And so we parted ways. And then I found out a few days later, he wanted to make a position for me, which became special assistant to the president. And at that time, I was just inspired by the idea of working for something that is on the right side of history. I was familiar with the disability rights movement to some degree because I had done some volunteering in the disability field. I had family friends with disabilities. It sort of just was always, disability was just always around. But I hadn't really thought about the rights part of it until I went to NOD, National Organization on Disability. And it was one of these also very small organizations where if you were hungry and you had the energy to keep up with Alan Reich, and then Mike DeLand, who came in as chairman, then the world was your oyster. And so one of the many projects I wound up staffing them on was the FDR wheelchair statue campaign. And for a young person who wants to be involved in Washington, there are sometimes these jobs, and I try to tell this to young people, that yeah, there are all these fancy named organizations or places in government or on the Hill, but sometimes it's the small organization that doesn't have a lot of bureaucracy that is where you can really make a difference, make your bones, if you will. So that's sort of where I got started. Wound up rising to becoming a vice president at the organization. And then in 2019, founded this organization.
So
Co-founded, I should say, co-founded. Yes.
We're talking about NOD. Is that who we're talking about?
That's where I worked, the National Organization on Disability, NOD. And I was there for 16 years.
Wow. Yeah. I know Governor Ridge was very involved with NOD.
Yes.
Well, that is a great story because I want to comment on something you said, Mary. That small job you were talking about, the two others would be a small job, staffing for that FDR statue. You can't imagine how exciting these things are. I'm sure it was so exciting for Mary because you're wheeling and dealing and you're on the Hill meeting people in Congress and meeting donors. And I mean, it's far more exciting than this big company and I get this much money and here I am. But there you are.
Yes.
There you are. You're in that one slot. But something like this is so exciting. Wouldn't you agree with that, Helena?
Absolutely. I think Mary either said it or alluded to this. Part of it, and I feel the same way, is also your impact that you're having and that you can really make a difference. This type of advocacy work we do, I think we do it because we're passionate about it, we care about it, and we want to make a difference. We want to, make things right when, when somebody's being discriminated or a bad law is passed or whatever, you want to just get a curb cut put in your community, at the real grassroots level. I don't think, maybe a lot is hyperbole, but the work that we do and the type of satisfaction that you get out of it and the type of impact and effectiveness you could have, not just now, but well into the future for future generations is really rewarding. And it doesn't happen in a lot of jobs. It really doesn't. I think, people who are doing advocacy work and want to get into the nonprofit world, regardless of what the issue is, you may even not even agree with the issue. It's because you really care. You're there because you care and you're there because you want to make a difference. And I think that definitely drove my passion, just knowing the impact that I could have on, even if it was just one person, making just one person's life, quality of life better.
Well, and you both have and still are today. And Helena, same thing with you. I mean, I know that you were all involved with senators, and I mean, they still are, but I mean, when it was just during the Becky Ogle days and Pat Wright, when things are really, really moving, even all the work on the ADA Amendments Act. Someone that I really miss is Cheryl Sensenbrenner.
Yeah, I think about her often. I really do. She was, her kindness and her generosity and her passion. I know we're not talking about AAPD, but if we're just talking about disability pride and what's happening in the community, as you all know, Joyce, she was such an integral part of AAPD's and AAPD's success, and why, a big reason why AAPD is still standing today.
Yeah. Well, she would be at this memorial, that's for sure. I mean, this foundation, she would be all over it. So why don't you tell us the FDR Monuments Disability Rights history? And then Mary, you may feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I'll start it. And Mary was obviously there in the thick of it with NOD, because it was, as she mentioned, the National Organization on Disability, who led the campaign for the fight, and it was a fight for the wheelchair statue. As she mentioned, there was Alan Wright, there was Mike Dolan, and then I don't think Jim Dixon got mentioned yet, who led the grassroots charge. And for anybody who knows Jim, he's a great grassroots organizer. He's a great grassroots mobilizer. He doesn't take no for an answer. He is, talk about one tough cookie. He is one tough cookie. And eventually 50 disability organizations joined in on this fight. Obviously, Mike and Alan were also, doing their lobbying effort and dealing with folks on the Hill. But I really think, so much credit needs to go to the disability community for their, relentless advocacy, for their persistence, and making a clear argument that there can't be an FDR memorial without showing the man in his wheelchair, and that he had a disability, and that he led with a disability, and that he was an effective leader with a disability. And if I'm not mistaken, I think a poll was done that showed, a Harris poll that was done that showed 73% of the public agreed with that wheelchair should be shown in his, that FDR should be shown in his wheelchair. And we're talking, that was like back in like the late 90s. That mindset yet around disability is not quite where we are today, but yet 73% of people said yes. And then I think, Mary, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was the day before the the FDR Memorial was going to be dedicated by President Clinton, that legislation passed, saying that there would be the erection of FDR in his wheelchair. So that's just a good overview, Mary. You may have some more details you want to share. So I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Thanks. Thank you so much. There are so many stories and so many people that need to be recognized, and I would use up all your time, Joyce, but a couple of folks that were there, and I always try to impress, and why this story of the wheelchair statue fight is a story that should be continued to be embraced by the disability rights community, is because Justin Dart was there, thick through all of it. Yoshiko Dart was there through all of it. I'm blanking on the last name of Nancy Flynn's husband, Rick, former chair of the President's Committee. It'll come to me. But somebody out there knows wonderful fellow Rick. And I'm sorry, Nancy, if you're listening. Evan Kemp was part of the fight. King Jordan was part of it, as well as lots of students from Gallaudet. Charlie Hodges, who was a leader from the blind community. Kirk Bauer, who led Disabled Sports USA. I could go on and on. And I'm not talking about people who just showed up for an hour to a meeting. I'm talking about people who stayed and were part of this fight, and were fully engaged. Jim Dixon, as Helena mentioned, secured the endorsements of over 50 disability rights organizations from across the country to say, yes, this is what we want as Americans with disabilities, and it's what we want. And then guess what happens? Sometimes you get what you want, and then we had to pay for it. So getting that legislation passed, calling for the addition of the wheelchair statue, was one fight. The next thing that had to happen was raising 1.65 million to fund the creation of the statue, that prologue room that we now all enjoy. And a lot of you folks out there, I'm sure you know, when a small nonprofit that is already struggling is told that it has to raise, its budget all over again for something else, that's not easy, but it got done. And again, we have Judy and Peter Blum Kovler, who made it largest benefactors to the memorial, but also Gordon and Laura Gund. And again, lots of small donations, even, and I won't get the exact to the dime, but the Palisades Park, New Jersey Elementary School donated about $367.52 from a bake sale. So we're talking, you want to go grassroots? We are as grassroots, and we were also pulling in the bigger monies as well, which is the only way to get success. But it is a story that needs to keep being told. I hope the disability community keeps it close to its heart. I hope that they embed this in their history. Marka Bristow, another great leader, loved the memorial. And at her memorial service, there was a picture of her with the FDR wheelchair statue. Judy Heumann was a major, I mean, I could go on and on. I'm going to stop, but this is the bread and butter of our community.
I know. I mean, it's so exciting to hear that history. And you're right, in that we need to focus on this more. And that's why every July I have, maybe AAPD, Bazelon, whomever, I have someone on, senators. But, I wanted to have you all on because this is disability history right now. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is a part of the disability rights community. Now, normally, and I know we're a few minutes late, we would have had at 2:30 exactly Mathis on the mic. I am so honored and blessed to have Jennifer Mathis on every week during the news. And do you know we're the only place anywhere where you can go get news every week on what's happening in the disability world? The only place. There is no other show you can go to, because we don't have CNN. So, this is where you go. And the great Jennifer Mathis is, I think, on vacation or something of that nature. And so we are so honored to have Claire. Is it Sheenan?
It's Shannon.
Claire Shannon, who joined the Bazelon Center in 2024 as the David and Mickey Bazelon Fellow. And she works on something that is very near to and dear to my heart, which is children's mental health care, but also Medicaid housing, all the major issues that Bazelon deals with. But she holds a Master of Philosophy, may I add this, with distinction, from the University of Cambridge, and a Bachelor of Arts in History from Brown University. But as Holly would say, We're just so lucky to have her at Bazelon. And I'm so thrilled to be on the board. So no matter what, Mathis on the mic. If Mathis isn't here, there's a Bazelon person that comes on the show. So Claire, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me. As you noted, Jennifer couldn't be here this week, unfortunately, but I'm excited to meet you all and to provide a news update. So as you all, I'm sure know, June 22nd was the anniversary of the Supreme Court's landmark decision, Olmstead v. LC, in which the court held that the unnecessary institutionalization and segregation of people with disabilities constitutes discrimination under the ADA. It affirmed the rights of people with disabilities to live and receive services in their communities. So to commemorate this anniversary, I wanted to share that the Bazelon Center hosted a briefing at the U.S. Senate on June 24th, where we focused on the importance of housing in effectuating and fulfilling the promise of Olmstead. So the event was titled Keys to the Community, Housing that Supports People with Disabilities to Live in Their Own Homes and Communities. And it brought together an excellent panel of advocates, service providers, people with lived experience, and policymakers to discuss how the right to live in the community can't be fully realized without comprehensive access to housing, services, and supports. And so in particular, our panelists covered, we had Corey Storch, who's the president and CEO of the Bridgeway Behavioral Health Services, which is a large mental health service provider in New Jersey, discuss how supportive housing transformed the state's mental health system for the better. Marcella McGuire was with us from the Corporation of Supportive Housing, and she talked about how people with disabilities shouldn't have to navigate mental health systems, healthcare systems, and housing systems all on their own without supports, but rather at the system level, those things should be coordinated and all handled together. And then we had Donald Whitehead, who's the executive director of the National Coalition for the Homeless, who talked about some concerning shifts, policy shifts in sort of housing policy away from what's called the housing first approach, which is where you are provided housing for people with significant disabilities without sort of conditions that you need to participate in certain services or supports. And it's an evidence-based approach that shows that people maintain their housing and they also improve in their health. So he discussed a concerning shift away from that and sort of conditional housing. And then also an increase in the criminalization of homelessness that's happening. And then lastly, the real star of the show is a woman named Rachel Ellison, who's a graduate of Pathways to Housing DC, which is a housing first program here in the district. She's a community organizer and she's an advocate with lived experience, who was unhoused for 17 years on the streets of DC and was connected with Pathways to Housing, was able to fully recover from a multitude of conditions and really just live an entirely independent and very exciting sort of life. And so she is now works as a community organizer to share her story and to speak the truth of what Housing First did for her. So this briefing proved timely, as I think you've all heard about, just a few days before the Department of Justice's Office of Legal Counsel released a memo on the integration mandate, in which it attacked those longstanding protections against unnecessary institutionalization. So it was sort of the perfect time for us to advocate for housing and emphasize the ways in which it really enables people to remain in their communities and avoid that unnecessary institutionalization. So the whole briefing is available on Bazelon's YouTube channel if you'd like to see it in full. And then relatedly, I wanted to share that the Center for Constituents with Disabilities, or CCD, is also hosting a congressional briefing to mark the Olmstead anniversary, and they're doing that with the Office of Senator Collins. This event will explore how community living maximizes independence for people with disabilities and catalyzes economic growth. It's moderated by our own Jennifer Mathis, and the speakers will include individuals with lived experience, economic researchers, service providers, and family caregivers. So that's going to be on July 23rd, so next Thursday, from 12 to 1:15 p.m. in the Capitol Visitor Center. They ask for folks to RSVP by July 20th, next Monday, if possible, but lunch will be provided. And if anyone needs more information, they can email communications@bazelon.org.
Well, that is awesome. Communications@bazelon.org. And we are all out here, just fighting to keep people in the community. I mean, that's such a terrible thing to even think of doing this. As Senator Harkin said the other day, that was even stated is just unheard of. But anyway, thank you so much, Claire. It was a pleasure to have you. I bet I'll see you again.
Thank you so much. I hope you all have a great day.
You too. Thank you. Yeah, that is quite a thing about Olmsted. That is so terrible. It really is terrible. So, Mary, I was going to ask Helena to do this, but why don't you tell the listeners where the FDR monument is, the location, how they go, what you can do, and what it's like. It's more than just him and the chair. It's beautiful. It is beautiful. But why don't you tell everyone about that?
Sure, thank you. That's one of my favorite things to talk about. So the FDR Memorial is located between the MLK Memorial and the Jefferson on the banks of the tidal basin across from the Potomac. So that sounds a little bit maybe confusing, but let's just say if you can get to the Martin Luther King Memorial, FDR is right next door. And similarly, if you go to Jefferson, if you just keep walking along the tidal basin, you'll definitely get to the FDR Memorial. From the Smithsonian Metro, it's about a 20-minute walk. Right now, unfortunately, there is no bus service that takes you right to the memorial. Hopefully that will change at some point. But a lot of people, I see them coming in on e-bikes or scooters or tour buses. The hop on, hop off can take you there, or a nice jaunty walk on a cooler day than today. So when you enter the FDR Memorial, the first thing that you see is the prologue room, which has the FDR wheelchair statue that we were speaking about. But the memorial, that was added, though, several years after the memorial was originally designed and dedicated. So the memorial is an outdoor memorial. It has, in addition to that prologue room, it has 4 open air rooms, each one dedicated to one of FDR's terms of office, first term through the 4th. And each one is filled with different pieces of art or waterfalls or both. It was designed by a great American landscape architect called Lawrence Halprin, who is kind of like the Elvis, if you will, of the landscape architecture world, one of the greats. And something that a lot of people also don't know is that the memorial contains artwork by some of the great American sculptors of the 20th century. Leonard Baskin, George Siegel, Robert Graham, all selected by Lawrence Halprin to create one-of-a-kind artwork to tell the story, not just of FDR, but of the era. So while it is a memorial that is named and dedicated to Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt, it is very much also a story of the era of Roosevelt, which obviously includes Eleanor. And so to bring it to Eleanor, her statue, and she is the only statue of a first lady in a presidential memorial, which if the memorial wasn't special enough, it's special because of that as well. And that is in room 4, very symbolically, while she was obviously with the president throughout from beginning to the end. But that is a symbol of her sort of taking on the torch that of human rights and international peace that FDR so wanted. He wanted to find a way to end all wars. And that's why we find Eleanor in room 4, and behind her, the crest of the United Nations.
Wow. Well, it is beautiful. It is truly beautiful. And one more time, what is that website?
FDRmemorial.org. So FDR, like
that?
Franklin Delano Roosevelt Memorial.org. And sign up
Yep.
for our newsletter on the top right of our website. You could also put in a donation, top right side of our newsletter as well. You'll see a nice little sign up button. You'll see a nice donate button. And we are happy to have you be part of our journey.
Just
And
a
you
little,
know, I am the CEO and founder of Bender Consulting Services, and a woman living with epilepsy on this mission to find employment for people with disabilities. But I'm also the founder and CEO of the Bender Leadership Academy, a not-for-profit that focuses on preparing students with disabilities for the world of work, and dealing with bullying and being empowered. And my dream, of course, I'm headquartered right here in Pittsburgh. My dream is that we are partnering with the FDR Memorial Foundation so that we get students with disabilities seeing this history. Now, you know, we can't do all these things without you. So again, website, Helena, what's that website?
FDRmemorial.org.
FDRmemorial.org, go up to donate and make a donation. Listen, I'm asking you, it doesn't have to be big. If it's big, we'll be happy. But if it's not big, every dollar counts. Every dollar counts, right, Mary?
It does. And I'd like to just also remind everyone what our mission statement is. So you know who we are and what we are. Our mission is to protect and preserve the FDR Memorial that we've been talking about, and promote the legacies of Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt. And within that legacy is the disability history piece. So that we are a lot of things, because there are so many legacies, but we will always have a very special part of our work that will always touch on the disability history of the memorial and FDR and the community.
Well, first of all, thank you both for being with us as we celebrate Disability Pride Month, and I will be so looking forward to seeing you in DC. But before we go, I always say it takes family member, business person, politician, historical figure, someone impacts us as we go on this road. So I'm going to start with you, Mary. Who is your role model? Like, who had that impact on you?
I'm going to mention the 3 gentlemen that we just spoke about. I'm just going to say a quick sentence about each one. One is Alan Reich. The exactitude that I saw that he would have each day in the office, and as exhausting as it was, it's exactly what is needed to affect change, especially when you are a small organization. You better see the commas that need to be fixed, and the dot every I, and always come with more energy than the next person into a room so that you could make sure that your story sings the loudest. Quickly about Mike DeLand, his congeniality, his ability to work both sides of the aisle, his ability to spin the tale about the wheelchair statue and convince people who were unconvincible about FDR's story. I hope I could emulate him. Jim Dixon, never give up. He's an intellect. He's a fighter. He's a strategic thinker. My goodness. If we could clone and put the three of them together, we'd have a superhuman. And I've been lucky to work with each one of them, and I hope I've gotten a little bit from each one.
Why you have, and I'm sure they have from you also. How about you, Helena?
I'm going to, I was thinking about Eleanor Roosevelt, but the way you phrased the question, I am actually going to say Yoshiko Dart. And the reason I say Yoshiko is one of the kindest, most generous, and I will say selfless individuals I met.
Mm-hmm.
She is passionate, obviously, about disability rights, but I think she's passionate about social justice issues. And she's given to this movement and other movements. When I say like selfless, I mean in a way where she's not looking for praise or recognition. She does it because she believes it. If anything, and you know this, Joyce, she sort of shies away from getting recognition and praise. Many times she does things anonymously. And we've all been around Washington, D.C. a long time. And that is not a characteristic you see in a lot of people in Washington, D.C. They want as much glory and PR as they can get. And like I said, I just admire Yoshiko immensely. Again, I appreciate her kindness, her generosity, and I can't think of a better person to emulate.
Hear, hear, amen. I agree with you, because if she wasn't like that, Yoshiko would be on my radio show. And I can't get her. Well, Yoshiko, as you can see, we love you. And we end every show with a quote. And I love this quote. Democracy cannot succeed unless those who express their choice are prepared to choose wisely, said the great President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And in the words of Mary Brocker, when you get up tomorrow, remember, choose joy. You won't be disappointed. Talk to you all next week.
Voice America would like to thank you for tuning in. Please join us next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time and 2 p.m. Eastern Time for another installment of Disability Matters, right here on the Voice America Variety Channel. We are the leader in live Internet talk radio. VoiceAmerica.com.